Welcome to a world where words bite back. Ambrose Bierce's The Devil's Dictionary isn't your average collection of definitions. It's a razor-sharp satire that turns everyday terms into wickedly funny insights about life, love, politics, and human nature. From redefining marriage to poking fun at politicians, Bierce's wit spares no one. So buckle up as we dive into some of the funniest, cleverest, and most brutally honest definitions ever written. Let's dive in. Abasement, a decent and customary mental attitude in the presence of wealth or power, peculiarly appropriate in an employee when addressing an employer. Abatis, rubbish in front of a fort to prevent the rubbish outside from molesting the rubbish inside. Ability, the natural equipment to accomplish some small part of the meaner ambitions, distinguishing able men from dead ones. In the last analysis, ability is commonly found to consist mainly in a high degree of solemnity. Perhaps, however, this impressive quality is rightly appraised. It is no easy task to be solemn. Abscond, to move in a mysterious way, commonly with the property of another. Abstainer, a weak person who yields to the temptation of denying himself a pleasure. A total abstainer is one who abstains from everything but abstention, and especially from inactivity in the affairs of others. Accuse, to affirm another's guilt or unworth, most commonly as a justification of ourselves for having wronged him. Acquaintance, a person whom we know well enough to borrow from but not well enough to lend to. A degree of friendship called slight when its object is poor or obscure, and intimate when he is rich or famous. Administration, an ingenious abstraction in politics, designed to receive the kicks and cuffs due to the premier or president, a man of straw, proof against bad egging and dead catting. Admiral, that part of a warship which does the talking while the figurehead does the thinking. Age, that period of life in which we compound for the vices that we still cherish, by reviling those that we have no longer the enterprise to commit. Air, a nutritious substance supplied by a bountiful providence for the fattening of the poor. Ambition, an overmastering desire to be vilified by enemies while living and made ridiculous by friends when dead. Antipathy, the sentiment inspired by one's friend's friend. Apologize, to lay the foundation for a future offense. Appetite, an instinct thoughtfully implanted by Providence as a solution to the labor question. Armor, the kind of clothing worn by a man whose tailor is a blacksmith. Australia, a country lying in the South Sea, whose industrial and commercial development has been unspeakably retarded by an unfortunate dispute among geographers as to whether it is a continent or an island. Babe or baby, a misshapen creature of no particular age, sex, or condition, chiefly remarkable for the violence of the sympathies and antipathies it excites in others, itself without sentiment or emotion. Back, that part of your friend which it is your privilege to contemplate in your adversity. Backbite, to speak of a man as you find him when he can't find you. Bait, a preparation that renders the hook more palatable. The best kind is beauty. Barometer, an ingenious instrument which indicates what kind of weather we are having. Bath, a kind of mystic ceremony substituted for religious worship, with what spiritual efficacy has not been determined. Beauty, the power by which a woman charms a lover and terrifies a husband. Beg, to ask for something with an earnestness proportioned to the belief that it will not be given. Bigamy, a mistake in taste for which the wisdom of the future will adjudge a punishment called trigamy. Or, a person who talks when you wish him to listen. Boundary. In political geography, an imaginary line between two nations separating the imaginary rights of one from the imaginary rights of the other. Brain, an apparatus with which we think what we think, that which distinguishes the man who is content to be something from the man who wishes to do something. Bride, a woman with a fine prospect of happiness behind her. Cabbage, a familiar kitchen garden vegetable about as large and wise as a man's head. Calamity, a more than commonly plain and unmistakable reminder that the affairs of this life are not of our own ordering. Calamities are of two kinds, misfortune to ourselves and good fortune to others. Cannibal, a gastronome of the old school who preserves the simple tastes and adheres to the natural diet of the pre-pork period. Carnivorous, addicted to the cruelty of devouring the timorous vegetarian, his heirs and assigns. Cat, a soft, indestructible automaton provided by nature to be kicked when things go wrong in the domestic circle. Cemetery, an isolated suburban spot where mourners match lies, poets write at a target, and stonecutters spell for a wager. Clock, a machine of great moral value to man, allaying his concern for the future by reminding him what a lot of time remains to him. Comfort, a state of mind produced by contemplation of a neighbor's uneasiness. Commonwealth, an administrative entity operated by an incalculable multitude of political parasites, logically active but fortuitously efficient. Consolation, the knowledge that a better man is more unfortunate than yourself. Consult, to seek another's disapproval of a course already decided on. Contempt, the feeling of a prudent man for an enemy who is too formidable safely to be opposed. Conversation, a fair for the display of the minor mental commodities, each exhibitor being too intent upon the arrangement of his own wares to observe those of his neighbor. Corporation, an ingenious device for obtaining individual profit without individual responsibility. Creditor, one of a tribe of savages dwelling beyond the financial straits and dreaded for their desolating incursions. Critic, a person who boasts himself hard to please because nobody tries to please him. Curiosity, an objectionable quality of the female mind. The desire to know whether or not a woman is cursed with curiosity is one of the most active and insatiable passions of the masculine soul. Dance, to leap about to the sound of tittering music, preferably with arms about your neighbor's wife or daughter. There are many kinds of dances, but all those requiring the participation of the two sexes have two characteristics in common. They are conspicuously innocent and warmly loved by the vicious. Day, a period of 24 hours mostly misspent. This period is divided into two parts, the day proper and the night or day improper, the former devoted to sins of business, the latter consecrated to the other sort. These two kinds of social activity overlap. Debt, an ingenious substitute for the chain and whip of the slave driver. Degradation, one of the stages of moral and social progress from private station to political preferment. Déjeuner, the breakfast of an American who has been in Paris, variously pronounced. Deliberation, the act of examining one's bread to determine which side it is buttered on. Delusion, the father of a most respectable family, comprising enthusiasm, affection, self-denial, faith, hope, charity, and many other goodly sons and daughters. Dentist, a prestidigitator who, putting metal into your mouth, pulls coins out of your pocket. Dependent, reliant upon another's generosity for the support which you are not in a position to exact from his fears. Destiny, a tyrant's authority for crime and fool's excuse for failure. Diagnosis, a physician's forecast of the disease by the patient's pulse and pulse. Dictator, the chief of a nation that prefers the pestilence of despotism to the plague of anarchy. Dictionary, a malevolent literary device for cramping the growth of a language and making it hard and inelastic. This dictionary, however, is a most useful work. Eat, to perform successively and successfully the functions of mastication, humectation, and deglutition. Eccentricity, a method of distinction so cheap that fools employ it to accentuate their incapacity. Economy, purchasing the barrel of whiskey that you do not need for the price of the cow that you cannot afford. Edible, good to eat and wholesome to digest as a worm to a toad to a snake to a pig to a man, and a man to a worm. Education, that which discloses to the wise and disguises from the foolish their lack of understanding. Egotist, a person of low taste, more interested in himself than in me. Elector, one who enjoys the sacred privilege of voting for the man of another man's choice. Emotion, a prostrating disease caused by a determination of the heart to the head. It is sometimes accompanied by a copious discharge of hydrated chloride of sodium from the eyes. Enthusiasm, a distemper of youth, curable by small doses of repentance in connection with outward applications of experience. Envelope, the coffin of a document, the scabbard of a bill, the husk of a remittance, the bedgown of a love letter. Epitaph, an inscription on a tomb showing that virtues acquired by death have a retroactive effect. Ethnology, the science that treats of the various tribes of man as robbers, thieves, swindlers, dunces, lunatics, idiots, and ethnologists. Eulogy, praise of a person who has either the advantages of wealth and power or the consideration to be dead. Excess, in morals an indulgence that enforces by appropriate penalties the law of moderation. Exile, one who serves his country by residing abroad, yet is not an ambassador. Experience, the wisdom that enables us to recognize as an undesirable old acquaintance the folly that we have already embraced. Famous, conspicuously miserable. Fashion, a despot whom the wise ridicule and obey. Felon, a person of greater enterprise than discretion, who in embracing an opportunity has formed an unfortunate attachment. Female, one of the opposing or unfair sex. Fiddle, an instrument to tickle human ears by friction of a horse's tail on the entrails of a cat. Finance, the art or science of managing revenues and resources for the best advantage of the manager. Flop, suddenly to change one's opinions and go over to another party. Fool, a person who pervades the domain of intellectual speculation and diffuses himself through the channels of moral activity. Forefinger, the finger commonly used in pointing out two malefactors. Fork, an instrument used chiefly for the purpose of putting dead animals into the mouth. Freedom, exemption from the stress of authority in a beggarly half-dozen of restraint's infinite multitude of methods. Friendship, a ship big enough to carry two in fair weather but only one in foul. Funeral, a pageant whereby we attest our respect for the dead by enriching the undertaker and strengthen our grief by an expenditure that deepens our groans and doubles our tears. Future, that period of time in which our affairs prosper, our friends are true, and our happiness is assured. Garter, an elastic band intended to keep a woman from coming out of her stockings and desolating the country. Generous. Originally, this word meant noble by birth and was rightly applied to a great multitude of persons. It now means noble by nature and is taking a bit of a rest. Genealogy, an account of one's descent from an ancestor who did not particularly care to trace his own. Ghost, the outward and visible sign of an inward fear. Goose, a bird that supplies quills for writing. Gout, a physician's name for the rheumatism of a rich patient. Grammar, a system of pitfalls thoughtfully prepared for the feet for the self-made man along the path by which he advances to distinction. Grave, a place in which the dead are laid to await the coming of the medical student. Guillotine, a machine which makes a Frenchman shrug his shoulders with good reason. Gunpowder, an agency employed by civilized nations for the settlement of disputes which might become troublesome if left unadjusted. Habit, a shackle for the free. Hag, an elderly lady whom you do not happen to like, sometimes called also a hen or cat. Hand, a singular instrument worn at the end of the human arm and commonly thrust into somebody's pocket. Handkerchief, a small square of silk or linen used in various ignoble offices about the face, and especially serviceable at funerals to conceal the lack of tears. Hangman, an officer of the law charged with duties of the highest dignity and utmost gravity, and held in hereditary disesteem by a populace having a criminal ancestry. Happiness, an agreeable sensation arising from contemplating the misery of another. Hash, there is no definition for this word, Nobody knows what hash is. Hatchet, a young axe known among Indians as a tomahawk. Hatred, a sentiment appropriate to the occasion of another's superiority. Heart, an automatic muscular blood pump. Figuratively, this useful organ is said to be the seat of emotions and sentiments, a very pretty fancy which, however, is nothing but a survival of a once universal belief. Heaven, a place where the wicked cease from troubling you with talk of their personal affairs, and the good listen with attention while you expound your own. Historian, a broad-gauge gossip. History, an account mostly false of events mostly unimportant, which are brought about by rulers mostly knaves and soldiers mostly fools. Homoeopathist, the humorist of the medical profession. Homicide, the slaying of one human being by another. There are 4 kinds of homicide: felonious, excusable, justifiable, and praiseworthy. But it makes no great difference to the person slain whether he fell by one kind or another. The classification is for advantage of the lawyers. Hope, desire and expectation rolled into one. Hospitality, the virtue which induces us to feed and lodge certain persons who are not in need of food and lodging. House, a hollow edifice erected for the habitation of man, rat, mouse, beetle, cockroach, fly, mosquito, flea, bacillus, and microbe. Humanity, the human race collectively exclusive of the anthropoid poets. Husband, one who, having dined, is charged with the care of the plate. Hyena, a beast held in reverence by some Oriental nations from its habit of frequenting at night the burial places of the dead. But the medical student does that. Hypocrite, one who, professing virtues that he does not respect, secures the advantage of seeming to be what he despises. Idiot, a member of a large and powerful tribe whose influence in human affairs has always been dominant and controlling. Imagination, a warehouse of facts with poet and liar in joint ownership. Immigrant, an unenlightened person who thinks one country better than another. Impenitence, a state of mind intermediate in point of time between sin and punishment. Impostor, a rival aspirant to public honors. Income, the natural and rational gauge and measure of respectability, the commonly accepted standards being artificial, arbitrary, and fallacious. Incompatibility, in matrimony a similarity of tastes, particularly the taste for domination. Indifferent, imperfectly sensible to distinctions among things. Infidel, in New York, one who does not believe in the Christian religion. In Constantinople, one who does. Ingrate, one who receives a benefit from another or is otherwise an object of charity. Injury, an offense next in degree of enormity to a slight. Injustice, a burden which of all those that we load upon others and carry ourselves is lightest in the hands and heaviest upon the back. Insurance, an ingenious modern game of chance in which the player is permitted to enjoy the comfortable conviction that he is beating the man who keeps the table. Intention, The mind's sense of the prevalence of one set of influences over another set, an effect whose cause is the imminence, immediate or remote, of the performance of an involuntary act. Interpreter, one who enables two persons of different languages to understand each other by repeating to each what it would have been to the interpreter's advantage for the other to have said. Intimacy, a relation into which fools are providentially drawn for their mutual destruction. Introduction, a social ceremony invented by the devil for the gratification of his servants and the plaguing of his enemies. Inventor, a person who makes an ingenious arrangement of wheels, levers, and springs and believes it's civilization. Jealous, unduly concerned about the preservation of that which can be lost only if not worth keeping. Jester, an officer formerly attached to a king's household whose business it was to amuse the court by ludicrous actions and utterances, the absurdity being attested by his motley costume. Jew's harp, an unmusical instrument played by holding it fast with the teeth and trying to brush it away with the finger. Justice, a commodity which is a more or less adulterated condition the state sells to the citizen as a reward for his allegiance, taxes, and personal service. Kill, to create a vacancy without nominating a successor. Kindness, a brief preface to 10 volumes of exaction. King, a male person commonly known in America as a crowned head, although he never wears a crown and has usually no head to speak of. Kleptomaniac, a rich thief. Labor, one of the processes by which A acquires property for B. Land, a part of the Earth's surface considered as property. Language, the music with which we charm the serpents guarding another's treasure. Lap, one of the most important organs of the female system, an admirable provision of nature for the repose of infancy, but chiefly useful in rural festivities to support plates of cold chicken and heads of adult males. Laughter, an interior convulsion producing a distortion of the features and accompanied by inarticulate noises. It is infectious and, though intermittent, incurable. Lawyer, one skilled in circumvention of the law. Laziness, unwarranted repose of manner in a person of low degree. Learning, the kind of ignorance distinguishing the studious. Lecturer, one with his hand in your pocket, his tongue in your ear, and his faith in your patience. Legacy, a gift from one who is legging it out of this vale of tears. Liar, a lawyer with a roving commission. Liberty, one of imagination's most precious possessions. Life, a spiritual pickle preserving the body from decay. We live in daily apprehension of its loss, yet when lost, it is not missed. Lighthouse, a tall building on the seashore in which the government maintains a lamp and the friend of a politician. Limb, the branch of a tree or the leg of an American woman. Liver, a large red organ thoughtfully provided by nature to be bilious with. Longevity, uncommon extension of the fear of death. Love, a temporary insanity curable by marriage or by removal of the patient from the influences under which he incurred the disorder. Mace, a staff of office signifying authority. Its form, that of a heavy club, indicates its original purpose and use in dissuading from dissent. Magic, an art of converting superstition into coin. Magnificent, having a grandeur or splendor superior to that to which the spectator is accustomed, as the ears of an ass to a rabbit, or the glory of a glowworm to a maggot. Maiden, a young person of the unfair sex addicted to clueless conduct and views that madden to crime. Male, a member of the unconsidered or negligible sex. The male of the human race is commonly known to the female as mere man. The genus has two varieties, good providers and bad providers. Mammalia, a family of vertebrate animals whose females in a state of nature suckle their young, but when civilized and enlightened put them out to nurse or use the bottle. Mausoleum, the final and funniest folly of the rich. Medal, a small metal disc given as a reward for virtues, attainments, or services more or less authentic. Medicine, a stone flung down the Bowery to kill a dog in Broadway. Merchant, one engaged in a commercial pursuit. A commercial pursuit is one in which the thing pursued is $1. Mercy, an attribute beloved of detected offenders. Mine, belonging to me if I can hold or seize it. Misfortune, the kind of fortune that never misses. Miss, the title with which we brand unmarried women to indicate that they are in the market. Money, a blessing that is of no advantage to us excepting when we part with it, an evidence of culture and a passport to polite society, supportable property. Monument, a structure intended to commemorate something which either needs no commemoration or cannot be commemorated. Moral, conforming to a local and mutable standard of right, having the quality of general expediency. More, the comparative degree of too much. Mouse, an animal which strews its path with fainting women. Mouth, in man, the gateway to the soul, in woman, the outlet of the heart. Mummy, an ancient Egyptian, formerly in universal use among modern civilized nations as medicine, and now engaged in supplying art with an excellent pigment. Mythology, the body of a primitive people's beliefs concerning its origin, early history, heroes, deities, and so forth, as distinguished from the true accounts which it invents later. Neighbor, one whom we are commanded to love as ourselves, and who does all he knows how to make us disobedient. Nepotism, appointing your grandmother to office for the good of the party. Nobleman, nature's provision for wealthy American minds ambitious to incur social distinction and suffer high life. Noise, a stench in the ear, undomesticated music, the chief product and authenticating sign of civilization. Nonsense, the objections that are urged against this excellent dictionary. Novel. A short story padded, a species of composition bearing the same relation to literature that the panorama bears to art. November, the 11th 12th of a weariness. Observatory, a place where astronomers conjecture away the guesses of their predecessors. Obsolete, no longer used by the timid. Offensive, generating disagreeable emotions or sensations as the advance of an army against its enemy. Old, in that stage of usefulness which is not inconsistent with general inefficiency, as an old man, discredited by lapse of time and offensive to the popular taste as an old book. Opera, a play representing life in another world whose inhabitants have no speech but song, no motions but gestures, and no postures but attitudes. Opportunity, a favorable occasion for grasping a disappointment. Opposition, in politics the party that prevents the government from running amok by hamstringing it. Optimism, the doctrine or belief that everything is beautiful, including what is ugly, everything good, especially the bad, and everything right that is wrong. Orthography, the science of spelling by the eye instead of the ear. Outcome, a particular type of disappointment. Overwork, a dangerous disorder affecting high public functionaries who want to go fishing. Pain, an uncomfortable frame of mind that may have a physical basis in something that is being done to the body, or may be purely mental, caused by the good fortune of another. Painting, the art of protecting flat surfaces from the weather and exposing them to the critic. Pantomime, a play in which the story is told without violence to the language, the least disagreeable form of dramatic action. Pardon, to remit a penalty and restore to the life of crime, to add to the lure of crime the temptation of ingratitude. Passport, a document treacherously inflicted upon a citizen going abroad, exposing him as an alien and pointing him out for special reprobation and outrage. Past, that part of eternity with some small fraction of which we have a slight and regrettable acquaintance. Patience, a minor form of despair disguised as a virtue. Peace, in international affairs, a period of cheating between two periods of fighting. Pedestrian, the variable and audible part of the roadway for an automobile. Perfection, an imaginary state of quality distinguished from the actual by an element known as excellence, an attribute of the critic. Pessimism, a philosophy forced upon the convictions of the observer by the disheartening prevalence of the optimist, with his scarecrow hope and his unsightly smile. Philosophy, a route of many roads leading from nowhere to nothing. Physician, one upon whom we set our hopes when ill and our dogs when well. Pig, an animal closely allied to the human race by the splendor and vivacity of its appetite, which, however, is inferior in scope for it sticks at pig. Pitiful, the state of an enemy or opponent after an imaginary encounter with oneself. Plan, to bother about the best method of accomplishing an accidental result. Please, to lay the foundation for a superstructure of imposition. pleasure, the least hateful form of dejection. Pocket, the cradle of motive and the grave of conscience. Police, an armed force for protection and participation. Politeness, the most acceptable hypocrisy. Polygamy, a house of atonement or expiatory chapel, fitted with several stools of repentance as distinguished from monogamy, which has but one. Prejudice, a vagrant opinion without visible means of support. Prescription, a physician's guess at what will best prolong the situation with least harm to the patient. Present, that part of eternity dividing the domain of disappointment from the realm of hope. Proof, evidence having a shade more of plausibility than of unlikelihood, the testimony of two credible witnesses as opposed to that of only one. Publish, in literary affairs, to become the fundamental element in a cone of critics. Queen, a woman by whom the realm is ruled when there is a king, and through whom it is ruled when there is not. Quill, an implement of torture yielded by a goose and commonly wielded by an ass. This use of the quill is now obsolete, but its modern equivalent, the steel pen, is wielded by the same everlasting presence. Quorum, a sufficient number of members of a deliberative body to have their own way and their own way of having it. Quotation, the act of repeating erroneously the words of another. Quotient, a number showing how many times a sum of money belonging to one person is contained in the pocket of another, usually about as many times as it can be got there. Rank, relative elevation in the scale of human worth. Ransom, the purchase of that which neither belongs to the seller nor can belong to the buyer, the most unprofitable of investments. Rash, insensible to the value of our advice. Rational, devoid of all delusions save those of observation, experience, and reflection. Railroad, the chief of many mechanical devices enabling us to get away from where we are to where we are no better off. Reason, to weigh probabilities in the scales of desire. Rebel, a proponent of a new misrule who has failed to establish it. Reconciliation, a suspension of hostilities, an armed truce for the purpose of digging up the dead. Reconsider, to seek a justification for a decision already made. Recreation, a particular kind of dejection to relieve a general fatigue. Redskin, a North American Indian whose skin is not red, at least not on the outside. Reparation, satisfaction that is made for a wrong and deducted from the satisfaction felt in committing it. Replica, a reproduction of a work of art by the artist that made the original. It is so called to distinguish it from a copy which is made by another artist. When the two are made with equal skill, the replica is the more valuable, for it is supposed to be more beautiful than it looks. Requiem, a mass for the dead which the minor poets assure us the winds sing o'er the graves of their favorites. Sometimes, by way of providing a varied entertainment, they sing a dirge. Rich, holding in trust and subject to an accounting the property of the indolent, the incompetent, the unthrifty, the envious, and the luckless. Right. Legitimate authority to be, to do, or to have, as the right to be a king, the right to do one's neighbor, the right to have measles, and the like. Riot. A popular entertainment given to the military by innocent bystanders. Road. A strip of land along which one may pass from where it is too tiresome to be to where it is futile to go. Rumor, a favorite weapon of the assassins of character. Salamander, originally a reptile inhabiting fire, later an anthropomorphous immortal but still a pyrophile. Satiety, the feeling that one has for the plate after he has eaten its contents, madam. Satire, an obsolete kind of literary composition in which the vices and follies of the author's enemies were expounded with imperfect tenderness. Source, the one infallible sign of civilization and enlightenment. Seal, a mark impressed upon certain kinds of documents to attest their authenticity and authority. Self-esteem, an erroneous appraisement. Selfish, devoid of consideration for the selfishness of others. Senate, a body of elderly gentlemen charged with high duties and misdemeanors. Sorcery, the ancient prototype and forerunner of political influence. It was, however, deemed less respectable and sometimes was punished by torture and death. Soul, a spiritual entity concerning which there hath been brave disputation. Story, a narrative commonly untrue. Success, the one unpardonable sin against one's fellows. Symbol, something that is supposed to typify or stand for something else. Tail, the part of an animal's spine that has transcended its natural limitations to set up an independent existence in a world of its own. Take, to acquire, frequently by force but preferably by stealth. Talk, to commit an indiscretion without temptation, from an impulse without purpose. Tariff, a scale of taxes on imports designed to protect the domestic producer against the greed of his consumer. Telephone, an invention of the devil which abrogates some of the advantages of making a disagreeable person keep his distance. Telescope, a device having a relation to the eye similar to that of the telephone to the ear, enabling distant objects to plague us with a multitude of needless details. Tenacity, a certain quality of the human hand in its relation to the coin of the realm. Tomb, the house of indifference. Trial, a formal inquiry designed to prove and put upon record the blameless characters of judges, advocates, and jurors. Truth, an ingenious compound of desirability and appearance. Discovery of truth is the sole purpose of philosophy, which is the most ancient occupation of the human mind and has a fair prospect of existing with increasing activity to the end of time. Ultimatum, in diplomacy, a last demand before resorting to concessions. Understanding, a cerebral secretion that enables one having it to know a house from a horse by the roof on the house. Universalist, one who forgoes the advantage of a hell for persons of another faith. Urbanity, the kind of civility that urban observers ascribe to dwellers in all cities but New York. Valor, a soldierly compound of vanity, duty, and the gambler's hope. Vanity, the tribute of a fool to the worth of the nearest ass. Virtues, certain abstentions. Vote, the instrument and symbol of a freeman's power to make a fool of himself and a wreck of his country. Wall Street, a symbol of sin for every devil to rebuke. War, a byproduct of the arts of peace. Weaknesses, certain primal powers of tyrant woman, wherewith she holds dominion over the male of her species, binding him to the service of her will and paralyzing his rebellious energies. Wedding, a ceremony at which two persons undertake to become one undertakes to become nothing, and nothing undertakes to become supportable. Wheat, a cereal from which a tolerably good whiskey can with some difficulty be made, and which is used also for bread. Wit, the salt with which the American humorist spoils his intellectual cookery by leaving it out. Hex in our alphabet, being a needless letter, has an added invincibility to the attacks of the spelling reformers, and like them, will doubtless last as long as the language. Words beginning with X are Grecian and will not be defined in this standard English dictionary. Year, a period of 365 disappointments. Yesterday, the infancy of youth, the youth of manhood, the entire past of age. Youth, the period of possibility, when Archimedes finds a fulcrum, Cassandra has a following, and 7 cities compete for the honor of endowing a living Homer. Zeal, a certain nervous disorder afflicting the young and inexperienced. Zenith, the point in the heavens directly overhead to a man standing or a growing cabbage. Zigzag, to move forward uncertainly from side to side as one carrying the white man's burden. Zoology, the science and history of the animal kingdom, including its king, the housefly. Before we wrap up, here's a little backstory about the Devil's Dictionary and its delightfully cynical creator, Ambrose Bierce. First published in bits and pieces between 1881 and 1906, the book was initially called The Cynic's Word Book, before getting its devilishly fitting title in 1911. Bierce, a former Civil War soldier and sharp-tongued journalist, used his biting wit to redefine common words, often exposing the absurdity of human behavior. But it wasn't just humor for humor's sake. Bierce's dark experiences shaped much of his worldview, and you can see that reflected in definitions that still resonate today. In fact, his definition of love as a temporary insanity, curable by marriage, is one of his most quoted lines. And speaking of mysteries, Bierce's life ended with one. In 1913, he traveled to Mexico during the Revolution and disappeared without a trace. His fate remains one of literature's great unsolved puzzles. So whether you laughed, cringed, or nodded in agreement today, Ambrose Bierce's wicked words remind us that sometimes The truth really is stranger and funnier than fiction. That's all, folks. We hope you had as much fun watching as we did making it. If you enjoyed what you saw, give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our latest content and support our channel's growth. Stay curious, keep smiling, and enjoy life.